And our series this month is, What Do I Believe? Today, I want to talk about, well, before I tell you what I want to talk about today, I trust that each one of you has taken some time these past couple of weeks since we started this series to consider the question, what do I believe? What do I believe? What do I believe? And why? And in that time of consideration, perhaps you've found some things that you would like to change, as Nana Veary found in her life when she was writing that book, Change We Must. And that was her spiritual journey. I talked about that last week. Some of you will remember. And undoubtedly, as you've considered this question, what do I believe? You've found many things that you have changed in your life already as you've developed your spiritual path more clearly and more confidently, because we get more confident as we have these successful benchmarks along the way. So today I want to explore with you the question, what is my work to do? Or what is my work to do? Or what is my work to do? Sounds like some homework, doesn't it? We haven't even started our next class and already Reverend Virginia is giving us homework. Indeed, I am. Now you get to consider this question. What is your work to do in this thing called life? And I'm not just talking about your job, per se. Although certainly who you are, what you think, and how you live your life shows up in the job, the work, the career that you have. I'm talking about the fact that we are not our jobs or our career. Wayne Dyer used to say, if you are what you do, meaning your job, then when you don't, you aren't. Another way of saying that is you are not your job. Your job is who you are. Your job is what you bring to that. And for most of us, that becomes very apparent when somebody waits on us in a restaurant, in a store, in a market, at the ticket counter. And they clearly telegraph to us their opinion of the work they do. Sometimes that's a very positive message. And we're appreciative and we're grateful for such good service and pleasant demeanor. And sometimes, well, you know. So what is my work to do when I find myself face to face with the one who telegraphs a negative, angry, or disinterested attitude? Can I be in that energy and not be brought down by it? Can I find something positive to focus on in that person? Perhaps even comment on it, and when I do, smile. Can who I am be the energy that transcends that negative? Several years ago, Barbara Marx Hubbard, who was the founder of the Association for Global New Thought, which is known as AGNT, spoke at a conference that I attended. And although that acronym, AGNT, sounds rather diabolical, in fact, it's a very uplifting and spiritually oriented organization, the Association for Global New Thought. It brings together teachers of new thought in religion, science, business, education, government, to learn and to share principles of what is now being referred to as conscious evolution. I'd really like you to think on that phrase this next week, conscious evolution. And I want to read to you the mission statement for AGNT. At our center is the one spirit out of which all paths grow, offering our gifts toward a universal spirituality. This is expressed through principles and practices of co-creation. These principles and practices are embodied in spirit-motivated social action that inspires conscious evolution in every field of endeavor, leading towards social transformation and a world awakened. Every time I listen to those words, I'm reminded of how many more similarities than differences there are in the minds and the hearts of conscious, caring people. How new thought, which is actually ancient wisdom revisited, brought forward, and made available to all of us, is the eventual outcome of all who seek and find truth here on planet Earth, in this plane of expression. AGNT has also created a declaration of principles for an awakened world. And although their declaration is long, it's actually over 2 pages, I just want to give you an excerpt from it. We live in a unitive consciousness. Our hearts are open to the continuous influx of human kindness and love. Our minds are alert to the impulse of the divine, which guides and directs. Our spiritual understanding brings forth a natural prosperity, proving the truth that abundance is our birthright. Our awakened world is a chalice holding the consciousness of its people who consistently reflect the ethic, as above, so below. As within, so without. It is done unto us as we believe. We choose to awaken to the eternal truth of our unity with our source. Awakened world. That phrase just jumps off the page at me every time I see it or hear it. Awakened world. I want to focus on that idea of an awakened world to bring our attention to the fact that an awakened world is a world of people, each of whom have consciously awakened to their own power, to their own mastery, to their own purpose and vision. And where do we start? Where do we start? We start right here and right here. Each of us needs to know where we ourselves are in consciousness before we can grow that consciousness. Each of us needs to know where we are in consciousness before we can grow the consciousness of the world around us. I want to share with you that I was a party to a conversation this past week by someone not in this room and not in this group, but someone about being so depressed and unhappy about the state of the world. And I heard this from someone that I've heard say that before, more than once. I'm not sure why that person keeps saying it in front of me or to me, because my response is always the same, and seemingly, at least so far, has had no evident positive impact. But you know what? I will keep responding with those words, consciously awakening to our own power, our own purpose and vision, our own personal mastery, because each of us needs to know where we are in consciousness before we can grow the consciousness of the world. So even though I'm saddened when I see this person still stuck in negativity, that they profess to be disturbed by, and I say professed to be disturbed by, I know it's not my job to change them. My job, my work to do, is to be that change that I wish to see, and to be unconditionally undiverted from it. We could make a case for, but this is not a blaming issue or a blaming forum. But when we are consciously stuck in something, always going back to that same, oh, ain't it awful, or why doesn't somebody do something about this, what are we doing? We are deflecting from beginning our own spiritual journey, one step at a time. Well, that's not enough. Well, it's more than nothing. And each step is another step into that expanded consciousness that joins with other expanded consciousness. So when we are only looking at the negative and saying, oh, ain't it awful, what are we doing? We're contributing to it. We're putting our energy toward it. We're only acknowledging that. That's not something that we can tell someone like that because they're not ready to hear it. All we can do, and I say all, and I'm not minimizing it because it's all we can do is to be that which we wish to see. Ernest Holmes once said, the universe, both visible and invisible, is a spiritual system. As humans, we're part of this spiritual order, so indivisibly united with it that the entire cosmos is reflected in our mind, our individualized mind. Evolution is the awakening of our soul or essence to a recognition of its unity with the whole. I can know that for myself, and I can know that for anybody who chooses to accept that. The awakening of my soul to a recognition of its unity with the whole. Material evolution is an effect, not a cause. Evolution, he said, is the result of intelligence, rather than intelligence being the result of evolution. Do you see the difference there? Evolution is the result of intelligence. Intelligence comes first, and then evolution. So just as there is perfect order in the physical universe, there is also perfect order in the spiritual universe. The application of spiritual laws is not attached to gender, to nationality, to religion. We could add some other things on that as well, because it is not attached to anything. It is universally present all the time. It doesn't randomly or with malice of forethought select some for favors and not others. It does respond, however, in the manner and intensity with which each one of us invokes it. So what does that say? My work to do. To open up to it, to accept it, to invoke it in me. It's already there. All I have to do is open to it. For example, in the science of mind, we teach order in spiritual mind treatment. We use 5 or 7 steps in our treatment process. And that's not because God said we have to. That's not because God said, I'll only listen if you do it this way. And it's not because spiritual laws require it. We do it because there is an order to it, one which helps us to focus to connect, and to accept. And that's exactly what it does as you move through the 5 steps. Focus. God is all there is, and I am one with God. To connect. And in that realization, I speak my word. I put forth my intention clearly as to what I am expecting. And then to accept. I accept this. I accept that I'm worthy and deserving of it. I accept that it is universally present. And I am simply enfolding it into my life experience. And then the final step that we do is to release those words into the law of mind, which is another way of saying, I have spoken my word and I'm going to get out of the way. I'm not going to edit, amend, put a PS on it, call later and say, oh, I forgot. I'm going to step back from the intention that I have stated and the acceptance that I have invoked and allow the universe to support me. Well, what if I made a mistake? You made a mistake. Do it again. Correct your mistake. That's all. That's all. When whatever it is that I am intending manifests in a manner different than I expected, and it's not better, because many times it's better, because the universe knows an unlimited number of ways to manifest, and I know maybe 1 or 2. Many times it's better than I expected. Thank you, God. Don't say I don't believe it. I can't believe it. It's better than what I intended. Believe it. Get used to it. I'm better than I thought I was. And if it does not manifest in a way that supports you and brings you joy, and you can honestly say it's as good or better than what I intended, do it again. It isn't that God missed the signal. It's that my signal was garbled in some way. That I am not as clear in my outcome as I thought I was. So I get a do-over. For those of you who play golf or used to play golf, you get a mulligan. Whenever you want it, you get a mulligan. So we do this in order to build our confidence, build our faith, build our trust in a form of manifestation that is universally, down through history, been extremely successful in virtually every spiritual persuasion and every philosophy that we are aware of. When we're fully focused, when we're fully connected, when we are fully accepting whatever we wish to bring forth in our lives, inevitably appears. It may not come as quickly as you expect. Why do you suppose that is? God's too busy this weekend? Got people with bigger issues than yours? You had to wait in line? It's in editing, in heavenly editing, and somebody is going through it and saying, yeah, maybe this needs to be done again. It's very poorly phrased. Voicemail's full? Nah, I don't think so. What it is that either I don't believe it when I send it, so I've sent it beautifully wrapped in doubt, or I'm not sufficiently clear in my intention. But you get a do-over on that too. So it's not that it hasn't gone forth. It's that it's come back and it doesn't look like what you thought it should. Or it's come back exactly the way you thought it would, which is, this isn't going to work for me. This has never worked for me before. Why would it work for me now? Or, I'm not so sure I deserve this. I mean, I can phrase the words. I can beautifully script it. I'm not so sure I really deserve this. That's when you get a mini car instead of a Mercedes stretch. See, I deserve a car, but I'm not sure I deserve that car. So what shows up is this car. I mean, it's an incredible lesson. You will get to where, as these things unfold, you see the humor in it. You see Spirit's sense of humor in responding back to us exactly where we are in consciousness. And it's not done with malice. It's not done to berate us, but rather to get our attention. Look where you are in consciousness. But it's better this month than it was last month. It's better this week than it was 2 years ago. So, now I'm manifesting. It isn't always exactly what I had in mind. Or maybe it's exactly what I had in mind, but I knew doggone well I wasn't worthy of it. So it's an opportunity really to play with it, isn't it? But in many instances, you will be overly pleased with what shows up. When you open to infinite possibilities, be careful, because they begin to show up. I've had people say to me, how do you turn this off? This is more than I can handle right now in my ordinary mind, and that's okay. I can gear back a little bit, and I can be more mindful of what I'm ready to handle. But doesn't it bring a smile to your face? I could attract more to myself than I actually realized was available. How am I going to handle all this? This is what happens to lottery winners when they're not ready. And a year later, they're in a recovery group. Not because it's so much to do, but because it's gone. So that's building a consciousness, isn't it? It's not just about the material stuff. The material stuff is just the material stuff, comes and goes. But the consciousness that I'm building, I get to keep. Oliver Wendell Holmes said, the mind stretched to a new dimension never returns to the lower dimension. Whoopee. Isn't that consoling? I can expand. So what it comes down to, my dears, is that what my work to do is what to address. That what my work to do is, what your work to do is, if you choose to do it, is to be the change we wish to see. That's my work to do. That's your work to do if you choose. Sometimes that means taking a deep breath and saying nothing when others are in a negative mode. Because saying nothing will keep us from appearing to agree. Sometimes it means waiting for an opportunity to make positive statements, and sometimes it means walking away from that negative energy, literally, as well as figuratively. Oh, and there's a fourth possibility of the work I have to do. When I find myself agreeing with the naysayers and the "oh, ain't it awful" crowd, to call my prayer partner, call my practitioner, call my minister, and get help. It's doing what Brian Hines called Return to the One. This is a guide to God realization. In it, he quotes Plotinus, who is an ancient sage who wrote the Aeneas. And here's the quote from Plotinus. Our spiritual wealth is so close, we're sometimes unable to find it. What separates us from what we seek is not physical distance, but rather the mistaken notion that we're separated at all. For it's looking outside ourselves that we distance ourselves from the one. A spiritual seeker's first step is to stop moving and to realize his or her true self. Plotinus, incidentally, was a 3rd century Greek philosopher and mystic. Ancient wisdom, ancient truth, still wisdom, still truth. So use the tools that you have to do your work. Know that those around you who are unable to find their spiritual wealth in this moment are really never far from it. And let me close with something Ernest Holmes told Nana Veery. For those of you who were here last week, I spoke on Nana Veery. You can hear that on YouTube when it comes up if you missed it. But this is something Ernest Holmes told Nana Veery the last time she saw him. He said, "Get a good metaphysical background. Know that God is all, and you will always know who you are and what your potential is. When you know that, you can go anywhere and be with anyone." And so it is.